Usually takes a few minutes, a few seconds for this thing to actually kick on. So let's see if we're going. This is nice. A little sunlight blasting the neck from the side. I want to talk about loving our enemies. There's one of the things that I've discovered on my journey is that I can come to the truth in more than one way, and often many ways. And sometimes it seems that every authentic path leads to the truth or the same truth. And I want to share something about loving our enemies, about why we should love our enemies. On the deepest...
Speed check reported ahead on I-40 East.
Okay, thank you. On the deepest level that I've experienced when it comes to who I am and who we are, I would say that because I've discovered that when I see the value and the beauty of who I am, enemy because they're you, and it really fun. But that's a pretty high standard experience, the genuine experience of seeing that. then you shouldn't be expected, and aren't expected, I would say, to live it. But what loving your enemy does is it lets on another level, and more of a power move, I would say. Something like, maybe it's an approach that the mafia would take, would be love your enemy because they're no threat to you. It's a real power move to invite your enemy in, to treat them well, to show them around, you know, the sort of, I can't remember what that type of comedy is called right now, but you take something to an extreme, extremely ridiculous level. But, you know, when you think of a mafia don inviting someone into his home, and they sit down and they have dinner with the family, and the guy's like, man, what's going on here? And he's just, you know, sharing things with them and turning his back on them in case he wants to shoot him, you know, like, yeah, go ahead and try to shoot me. You know, that type of thing, like not actually saying it. And then eventually he takes him outside and shows him his safe where he keeps all of his valuables, and maybe gives him the code to the safe. You know, you get to a point of absurdity where it becomes humorous, but before you get there, what you get is you get a scary level of confidence that the enemy has, because he's like, wow, this guy sees me not as any kind of threat at all. If you really understand that your enemies are not a threat to you, you can afford to love them, and why wouldn't you?
Speed check reported ahead on I-40 East.
Thank you. Can you guys hear these updates that are coming through my phone? Because otherwise I'm just look like I'm crazy. One of the things I like about the teachings of Jesus is that a lot of times he gives instruction on how to live life in a way that we absolutely cannot do. And there's an implication there that if you don't catch the implication, you're just going to feel overwhelmed with the rules of love your enemy, and love God with all your heart and soul and brains and feet and your toes, and love God with all your fingers. It's like, what? What is that? Sounds so, what a horrible life. To just love God with all the parts, and the maximum part of all the parts. The same with love your enemy. The same with turn the other cheek. These things are horrible to think about. And they sound just, you just either feel buried underneath the weight of them, Or you're just completely disinterested because nothing about that life appeals to you. But the implication is when he says, love your enemies, what's implied is become the person who can love their enemies. Love God with all your heart and soul and mind. Become somebody who can love God with all your heart and soul and mind. Have the experiences with God that are necessary, just like you would have experiences with somebody else. If you were told by a religious leader or by God himself to go and love somebody, I want you to love that woman right there with all of your being. You wouldn't sit down and read books about how to love people. You wouldn't meditate on love. You wouldn't judge yourself for not loving. What you do is you get up and you go across the room and you introduce yourself. And you begin an interactive relationship with this woman so that you could get to know her and thereby love her. If God is the best thing in the world, it's an overstatement and understatement. It's kind of fun. What is it called? Not superfluous. Anyway, if God's the greatest thing in the world, don't go loving God from a distance. Get to know him and find out if you can love him. I don't know. I don't have a lot of guilt around my inability or my unwillingness or my just lack of being who many people think you should be. Someone say, do you love God? I'd say, I don't know. I mean, like, kind of, sometimes. Not sure I know him that well. Do you love your enemies? Like, not really, no. But do I know my enemies? Not really. Can I become the kind of person who loves enemies, who loves my enemies? Yes. If I'm willing to spend time with them, if I'm willing to find out who I am, if I'm willing to find out that, if I'm willing to have enough experiences in life where I realize that nobody can stop me from fulfilling and doing what I'm here to do, then loving my enemies will be a natural byproduct of understanding the world as it is. And loving others will be that same thing. So, that's a little bit about loving our enemies. And once again, for me, it comes back to being willing to have experiences that help us become the kind of person who can do the things that seem so impossible. If you can become someone who genuinely loves your enemies, wow, that is, you have become something really meaningful. All right, catch you later.